Yesterday, thousands of South Africans gathered at the Union buildings, those who support the Democratic Alliance in Pretoria, to show support for the party as it launched its election manifesto. The top 7 priorities of the Democratic Alliance include generating 2 million jobs, eliminating load and water shedding, lowering rates of violent crime, eliminating corruption, and ending poverty. We speak now to Professor Andre Duvenhage, a political analyst. We'll go through some of those 7 priorities in a few moments with you. Prof, a good morning to you and thank you very much for your time. So yesterday we heard from a party that says it wants to rescue South Africa. What is it, do you perceive or have you observed, South Africa needs to be rescued from? Is it obvious to you?
Morning, Dudu and listeners. Yes, I think what the DA leadership is referring to is the political, economic and social crisis / challenges in South Africa, and in particular the failing state concept. And now we must understand that the ANC, in terms of their policy, is embarking on the state to deliver services, but it is not working, like we have seen with regard to Eskom, other SOEs, local government, border control, and many other aspects. In that context, the Democratic Alliance is seeing the upcoming 2024 elections as a historical opportunity to break the power grip of the ANC on South African politics. What is, however, interesting is that some of the surveys are indicating a support base for the DA below 20%, sometimes very close to that of the EFF, but their own surveys has shown that their support is anything between 25 and 30%. And they are also working with the perspective that the multi-party charter can improve their support base, and in that alliance context, there's a strong party needed to be the core of the alliance, and they believe the DA, as a result of this, has an opportunity in even winning the ANC in the coming elections.
Prof, is the work of the opposition to do exactly that, to just oppose, or is there more to it? What is your understanding of the contribution of the party, more so when you take a look maybe at its performance in Parliament, where a number of laws are actually made and passed in the country?
Well, the job of any opposition party is to oppose, to follow a critical approach and see how they can contribute towards political processes and their related outcomes. And we have seen the DA winning a significant, important court case at the Constitutional Court with regard to cadre deployment. They were also very critical about populist legislations that were put through the system over the last year or is still in process. I'm referring to the Bella legislation, the hate speech legislation, the Property Act, the National Health Insurance Bill, and so on. So their job is to be critical. But we are also in a time where it seems if parties are going to find it more and more difficult to achieve outright majority. So you need to challenge your opposition in such a way that there is still room for cooperation in the future. Now, I honestly do not believe there's a big chance of the ANC and the DA working together in a grand coalition, but where South Africa's politics are at the moment, anything is possible. And some analysts believe that it is not impossible for a sort of a grand coalition to come through the system after the 2024 elections.
Prof, is it impossible to have a national agenda? Is it clear to you whether it's the Democratic Alliance or other political parties, more so when you take a look at the performance of coalitions at local government level. Is it clear to you that there is a national interest that is being driven by these political parties? As you rightfully mentioned, it could go any which way. And if it does go the way of coalitions, is it clear to you that everybody's in it to win it for you and I, and not for self?
Well, I think the reality of the situation is that it seems at this point, if it is highly likely that the ANC will achieve not an absolute majority, it will be below 50%. Some analysts are referring to even below 45%, and some are indicating a percentage as low as 39%. But many things can change towards the election, and we know that the ANC as a party are performing very well. But then we have 2 provinces, and some people are arguing there are in fact 4 provinces that has the potential for coalition politics. It is Gauteng, it is the Free State, it is KZN, and the possibility of the Western Cape, where the DA is prominent and where there are parties that are performing very, very well in some of the local elections recently, referring to the Patriotic Alliance amongst others. So yes, it is there, but your question is about national interest. And in our political culture, we do not have a strong tradition of coalition politics and closer cooperation. Therefore, what we are looking at is more the private good than the common good. Or we are looking at strong forms of identity politics presenting itself. And it seems as if I look at the parties that are registered or in process of registration for the election, currently there are about 350 at play, it seems as if we are looking at the fragmentation of the political process. The counter to this is coalition politics. And I believe that coalition politics are the future, but it has severe challenges to overcome. One of the biggest challenges is to create a stable political environment. And I believe that the country is in need for legislation to regulate coalition politics in some form.
How is it working for us, Prof, at local government level? Because just in the city of Tshwane, for instance, with that DA-led coalition, you've got reports swirling about that National Treasury is going to take some measures, including withholding various grants from the municipality, pointing to financial mismanagement in the city of Tshwane under the DA. And so how is that working for us at provincial or rather at local government level? And if we're speaking about coalitions at national level, if it is failing or appearing to be failing at local government level, how is it going to play out at national level, do you perceive?
Well, the only scenarios at the moment we have is the scenarios on local level. And if this is the future, then there's a real threat of high levels of political instability in the country, especially if the margins are very close, the one party winning the other with a small margin, etc. But my biggest concern is that there's still a lot of radical politics involved in our bigger political environment. And I'm specifically referring to the political, what I refer to as misconduct of parties like the EFF, and I think the ANC is also part of that. If there's another government that is not including, for example, the ANC, they are following a strategy to undermine these parties. And that is what we are looking at Tshwane. The ANC and its support base is deliberately undermining the coalition, despite the fact that the coalition has an absolute majority. So that is a problem of political culture. And already Panjasa Lesufi has indicated that he is very concerned about stability if the ANC is not going to win Gauteng. And he is making use of wardens. That is very much a concern to me, because these are people that can play a role in terms of a free and fair election. So I must agree, parties are focusing on themselves. The process is very much proliferating in terms of separate identities. And maybe at the end of the day, the big thing is that we must work towards bigger conversations, a bit of CODESA talks among political parties to see if they can work together. And already we have seen something of this with regard to the IFP and the Democratic Alliance, resulting in a number of wins for the IFP in KZN. But we need cooperation at many levels. But before you can get cooperation, you must first get a value system where all different parties are buying into. And this is not the case at the moment. Broadly speaking, if you look at the DA and we look at the manifesto of the DA, it is very strongly social democratic in its orientation. If you look at the ANC policies, it is strongly socialist, centralized in nature. If you look at the EFF as a party, you will find strong African nationalism resulting in radical politics. Therefore, it was about impossible to create common ground between the EFF and the Democratic Alliance, resulting in patterns of instability at many local levels, not only Tshwane, but Johannesburg, Nelson Mandela Bay, etc.
Prof, for your time this morning. Professor Andre Duvenhage is a political analyst.